to teach online during COVID, but so sometimes it helps. All right, let's take a look. We are at 9:30, so I think we're ready to go live.
We are live.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Professional Standards Teacher Ed Board meeting. I appreciate everybody being here virtually, and I hope everybody is staying warm. We had sort of a light agenda, so we made the decision that this was probably in the best interest of everybody, particularly folks who have to travel so far. So again, I appreciate everybody being here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Our first item of business is public comment, and I think you'll notice that we did get quite a bit of public comment, and that was in regard to 13 Edge 120203. And I think we can go over that public comment a little bit more when we get to the permission to adopt at that point. Kelly, do we have anybody else that you've seen that's here for public comment?
We do. We have one person today. Ms. Rachel McGrain has joined us.
All right. Ms. McGrain, whenever you're ready, we are. And we're glad you're here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel McGrain. I'm the Executive Director at Arts Education in Maryland Schools. I'm sharing public comment in support of 13A 120203, but mostly I just wanted to take a moment to share some gratitude for this board and the MSDE staff. It's been quite a journey for us, and for me personally, I've learned so much about licensure in the last year and a half or so, from hearing from a collaborator who brought this issue to our attention, navigating and figuring out like what do we do about it, bringing the public comment. I was privileged to serve on the Fine Arts Working Group that produced the recommendations that you all then had some really great and robust conversations about that led to these recommendations. And we've been, following the public comment throughout. And so I'm very excited for the vote today. So again, want to share my support and gratitude, and I totally support you going virtual, but I was really looking forward to coming in person today because Chair Hornbeck, you've made such a good pitch for it in the past. And I've been watching all of the meetings over the last year following this process. So sometime soon I'll come in person when you all happen in person again. So that's all. Just wanted to share my gratitude in support of the pathway to licensure. And on behalf of the fine arts community, we're very excited for this.
All right, well, we thank you so much, and we miss being in person as well. We would like to see each other, and there's always beautiful music that's playing right before the meetings start. I miss that. But anyway, I'm so glad you're here. And one, I need to say thank you to you, particularly as a participant on the work group, because those work groups were extremely important in crafting this. And also, just we'll say it again when we get to it, but a quick shout out to Kelly Meadows and her staff for helping craft this and turn it into the COMAR, because we've been working on it since before summer. I remember talking to a lot of art teachers and so forth. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. You're welcome to stay for the meeting, or you can hop off if you need.
I will hop off and watch the live stream. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. And Kelly, did you say, do we have any more?
No.
Okay. All right. And again, thanks to everybody who sent us public comment. Again, we'll discuss that a little bit later when we get to permission to adopt. As we go forward in the meeting, since we're virtual again, my recommendation is to probably not use the chat. That's a lot to kind of have to balance back and forth. And if Dr. Terrell, if you don't mind sort of being traffic cop and watching to see who has hands up and calling on people, that would help out greatly. Are you willing to do that?
I am.
All right. Thank you so much. I always appreciate that. All right. So we finish now with public comment. Are there any announcements? Well, for anybody who's on the board and received the last package, congratulations to Ms. Handley on the birth of the child. We got wonderful pictures and so forth. She wasn't able, I don't think she's with us today. She said she had a previous commitment, but if you haven't noticed that, wonderful applause to her and congratulations. That was great. I love seeing those pictures. It was very nice. All right, Kelly, I believe you had something.
I do. I was contacted by the individuals putting on the Common Ground conference in March. So just wanted to share that information. And I have a few flyers that I will send out to the board momentarily. It is March 19th and 20th. And I believe it is in Ocean City. No, I'm sorry. This is Sheraton in Towson.
Yes.
So it's right up the road from a lot of us. So that's good to know. So I will get this to you.
All right, that sounds great. Any questions about that? Okay, Kelly, you had your hand up. Was there something else?
My hands up.
Okay. All right.
I don't know
Sounds
if you
good.
can see my hand, Darren. It blended in with the background, but I did.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, jump right in.
Sure. This is sort of just a point of information, but still an announcement. The Maryland Association of Colleges of Teacher Education, several institutions of higher education and our district partners did go to Annapolis for an advocacy day this week to advocate for teacher education, to advocate for funding for PK-12 education and opportunities to really build a robust teacher pipeline. So thank you to everyone who joined, participated, braved the icy streets of Annapolis, and met with several of our delegates and senators. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that update. Anybody else?
Dr. Woody.
Nikki.
I actually want to take the opportunity to shout out our very own Kelly Meadows and Jason Keys, because I had the opportunity to attend the residency teacher apprenticeship conference in last week. Oh my goodness, it was just last week. And they did a remarkable job uplifting the work we're doing here in Maryland around making sure that we are meeting the pipeline needs of our schools every day. And it was quite an honor to see them up there on the big stage with everyone and really just elevating all the work that the MSDE has been doing, but really in those amazing partnerships that they're having with our locals across the various LEAs. Kudos to Kelly and Jason.
And partnership with organizations like MSEA and BTU, because certainly we would not be able to do all that great work without our educator preparation programs, without our union partners. So thank you for lifting that up. I appreciate that.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I'm looking around the room. I didn't see Hannah here yet. Is Hannah here? All right. I'll tell you what. Let's go past the state board update. I believe Ms. Hoke is here. Would you mind?
Hi there, everyone. Would it be helpful if I shared my screen with the document that I'm going to be going over? Okay, sounds
Sure.
good. Let
That
me
would be
get
great.
that up.
Yeah, this was, I believe, if you're sending the same one, this was also sent out. Looks like this.
Yes, it was. I did make one update because one bill that is relevant to all of your work was introduced yesterday. So that was introduced since you all received the materials, and that will be the final bill we go over. And I can make sure you all get the that'll be what I'm presenting on my screen, and I'll make sure you get the copy of that after this. Okay, share. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Maddie Hauk. It's good to see you all again since last year. I'm on the government affairs team here at MSDE, and I'm going to go over 7 bills that have to do with the work of the Professional Standards Board this morning. So first up, we have Senate Bill 57. This is the primary and secondary educators licenses and public profiles notation of veteran status bill. This was introduced by Senator Simon Ayer. It has its hearing in 2 weeks in the EEE committee. And this bill says that MSDE needs to establish a notation on an educator's license to note that that person is a veteran of our armed services. Next up, we have House Bill 420, Senate Bill 242. This is the Modernizing Civil Relief for Service Members Act. This is cross-filed, and it was primary sponsored by Delegate Rogers and Senator Simon Ayer once again. It has its last I checked, the EEE hearing was not scheduled yet, but in 2 weeks it will have its House hearing in the GLE committee, which is the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. And this allows for service members and their spouses to practice in Maryland with their license that was issued in a different jurisdiction. It accounts for reciprocity and has an expedited licensure process. And this has actually been this has been added at the federal level as a requirement. So all states are going to be expected to comply with this going forward. Okay. Yes, Kelly.
So I just want to emphasize that because this is a federal mandate, we will have to tackle this, whether or not this bill passes. So that will be on our agenda coming up pretty soon here.
Yes, that is a great point, Kelly. Next up, we have another cross-file bill. This is Senate Bill 238. Oh, also, I need to share the appropriate part of my screen because I'm reading from paper. All right, Senate Bill 238, House Bill 340. This is the School Psychologist Interstate Licensure Compact. Our primary sponsors are Senator Augustine and Delegate Merrick North. It has a hearing next week in the House on the 11th and the following week in Triple E on the 18th. So this would have Maryland opting in to the School Psychologist Licensure Compact. The compact goes into effect when 7 states join it. So from what we understand, officially 7 states have just joined it, and a couple others this year are also looking at it in their state legislatures. So at some point in the next year or so, this will go active. So member states would have school psychologists having reciprocity, and there would not be duplicative licensing requirements. The current practices on this do align with Pathway 2 that we have here in the state of Maryland. Pathway 2 is our reciprocity pathway to becoming a school psychologist in the state of Maryland. So that requirement is the completion of a graduate degree and from an out-of-state approved program, 1,200 hours of internships and a passing score on a licensure exam. So this is not changing any of the existing criteria we have for reciprocity. One of the big changes that would occur if this were to pass that would have to do with like operationalizing it is currently your background check is at the point of hire by the LEA you work for or that you are going to work for. This would require that to happen at the point of licensure by MSDE, which would be a pretty big change to our processes. We do not do that work here at MSDE as far as any K-12 employees. The only work that happens as far as background checks at licensure has to do with our like childcare providers, which is not something that is not covered obviously by this bill or K-12 education. That would be a very big change in process as far as the work that we do here at MSDE, and it could potentially elongate how long it takes someone to get their license for the state, and it would be taking that from the LEAs. That's the biggest change that this would impact as far as our agency goes and changes to like the reciprocity pathways. Obviously, the goal of this is ultimately to hopefully increase the number of school psychologists who are looking to work in Maryland. I don't know if any of you all have questions about this. We can also go to questions on all bills at the end, depending what your preference is.
I think we can take questions at the end.
Sounds good. All right, next up we have another reciprocity bill. This is Senate Bill 418, another bill from Senator Simonaire for members of our foreign service and their spouses. The Triple E hearing for this is TBD. So this allows members of our foreign service and their spouses to have licensed reciprocity in Maryland for the portion of or for the amount of their assignment that is here in the state of Maryland. Again, occupational and professional licenses across spectrums. K-12 education would be inclusive of that. Next, we have a bill about you all, House Bill 328, the Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board composition. So this would be removing the non-public classroom teacher and having another representative from MANSEF on PSTEB. And this has a hearing next week on Wednesday. And it's from Delegate Guyton. Yes, Kelly?
Just to give a little bit more context, so historically, for the past several years, the AIMS organization, which is the organization that nominates the seats for the non-public schools, we have one MANSEF seat, which just went into law a few years ago, and then 2 seats are from the AIMS organization. AIMS has historically given MANSEF one of their seats, and so it is my understanding that MANSEF worked with AIMS to codify that arrangement, and the result is the bill that you see here.
Nikki?
Well, we have an opportunity to talk about this. I understand all the background to it, but I do think as a board, we really should have some discussion on this particular one.
Yeah, we could absolutely, after I'm done going through the
Yep.
final 2 bills, it'll be open. It'll be an open conversation about any of the bills that we want to talk about. All right, next up we have our bill from the AIB. This is a broader bill that makes revisions to the blueprint. It is inclusive of some of the work on educator licensure. So Senate Bill 311, the cross file is House Bill 490. It will have its Senate hearing in 2 weeks. So the pieces that have to do with your all's work is that this now allows MSDE to approve the portfolio-based assessments for EPPs. And then the other big one, which has been obviously a big topic of conversation across the state, is delaying the requirement for principals to have that national board certificate until the start of 2034. So delaying that by multiple years. And then finally, we have the new bill that dropped yesterday. This is a teacher preparation program bill, House Bill 807, English language learner teacher competency requirements. Since this is new, it does not have its hearing date yet. It was introduced by Delegate Lehman, and this says that preparation programs shall include certain amounts of ELL training for their teachers and make sure that the teachers have competency in that, and that beginning in that SY 28-29 year, they need a 3-credit course on requiring that they offer have the 3-credit course for teachers on ELL instruction and the competencies teachers need for that. These are all of the bills that have to do with your all's work ensuring that our teachers are appropriately licensed in the state, and we can now open it up for discussion. I saw Ebony's hand and then I saw Debbie's hand.
Sure, if it's okay. First of all, thank you, Maddie, for always giving us a wonderful synopsis, just the right detail. And I hope you'll share this document with
Yes.
as well. If we can work backwards, if that's okay with this most recent bill.
Yes.
That dropped. Darren, I don't know if you want to jump in on the standalone ESOL course conversation, but I just wanted us to really think about what that means for teacher preparation and how our in-task standards and other competencies address specifically multilingual learners as it stands, and the other requirement that include English language learners or multilingual learners is the appropriate term. So I'm going to come back to it, but I just wanted to have us think about it a little bit. Darren, did you want to add anything given?
Sure, I can add just a little bit. Just to let the board know, I was going to maybe do this during the announcements, but I figured I'd wait until we got to the bill. Delegate Lehman's office did reach out to Ebony and I and ask if we would meet with her briefly, just to kind of talk about the bill a little bit. Now, we did not take a position on behalf of the board. What we did offer was some technical assistance just about what Ebony's saying, because obviously those of you who've been on the board for a little while know that we've wrestled many times with, do we want to add a standalone course? And that presents an enormous number of problems, whether it's ELL or discipline or a variety of different good ideas that people have had, for all of the reasons that Ebony brought up. The board reminded her that, or rather, I'm sorry, Ebony and I reminded her that we certainly have a desire to make sure that we keep the teacher preparation programs to 4 years. If there's not much room to add anything, if you add something, most people have to take it out. And we talked about the pluses and minuses of embedding particular content into the existing courses that we have, which is one of the ways that we do that, and how that allows a level of specificity. So we kind of went over what I think has been really a capsulizing of what this board has talked about whenever we've discussed adding additional courses, the challenges that come into that. And I thought it was a receptive meeting. All right, Ebony, but I'll go back to you.
Sure. And just one nuance that I offered as an ESOL teacher, an ESOL biology teacher is also, when you go into a secondary licensure area, at most IHEs, you have to double major, which then also reduces opportunity. However, in, for example, a science methods class, there's an opportunity to nuance how you would serve multilingual learners in the ways that many of the IHEs currently offer. As well, there are IHEs that already have a standalone course. It may or may not be 3 credits. And that is because, over time, there are other, I'm going to say, competing initiatives that are equally as important, like special education. And so the current landscape as it stands, based on the licensure requirements that we have, the competencies that put forward should be considered as we discuss this and as you think about this. I'm just trying to speak generally so that, thank you.
Thank you, Ebony and Darren. In this order, I saw Debbie, then Nikki, then Leslie.
Thanks. I didn't know if anybody else had a comment though about this conversation, if so, because mine's just a minor one about something else. Did anyone else have something?
Nikki or Leslie, or either of your comments about 807?
I have two. My first one, I'll just say I am in very much agreement with Dr. Shockley and Mr. Hornbeck about concerns around additional requirements, and would not be in favor of that happening. I think we really need to dig a little deeper to understand and look at the courses, because many of those courses, to Dr. Shockley's point, incorporate the materials that they're looking to have in place. And that's a more interdisciplinary approach to meeting the needs of teacher prep programs rather than just, hey, here's your isolated course on such material. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Nikki. Leslie and Jenny.
Yeah, and this might actually be a question for Dr. Shockley. When some of the other courses are incorporating, methods around multilingual learners, for example, is that sort of standardized across different IHEs, or is that up to like the professor of that course to decide how that works? I mean, I'm just curious about, is there some norming around that?
Sure. So IHEs address the competencies and the requirements if they're on a licensure track in various ways. And some IHEs have standalone courses, and other IHEs address them across a series of courses, including in the recent updates to disciplinary literacy and content area reading. And so there is not one consistent way that IHEs address it, because different IHEs have organized their credentials based on just a range of the structure of the institution. Before when a program goes forward to MSDE, there are specific requirements, including faculty background, knowledge, skills, and assessment, key competencies. There's a range of work that has to go forward for a program, and that includes where a course and how a program addresses and supports multilingual learners. So it is not consistent at the IHE level, but it is approved at the state level. I hope I answered your question.
I think so. I think I'm just hoping that there's just some consistency in what specifically courses they're teaching. I think so. I think you answered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jenny.
Thank you. I will echo my colleagues' concerns. It's not the content that I'm opposed to, it's the 3 credit hours. I coordinate an MAT program, and it would be a real challenge to get another course into that year. It would be very challenging. I totally support this instruction, but it's the 3 credit hours. And even when I think of our undergraduate programs, the secondary teachers, I don't know how they would fit it in. I genuinely don't. The P9, they are packed to the gills. So really support the spirit, but the technical piece is just very challenging. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for sharing. And I'll always remind you that you all are experts in this field across the disciplines within teaching, and your voices and expertise are helpful when it comes to bills. So please always feel free to consider submitting testimony or speaking to delegates. And if you ever want help scheduling, whether it be a phone call or something, please know that myself and other people in the government affairs team are happy to help you as far as scheduling and making sure that those touch points are available to you all. I think that I think everyone had a chance to share their thoughts on 807. So I'm going to let Debbie bring us to our next bill.
Thanks. And I'm actually going to just chime in too, just to say I agree that the content is important, but we all, as Ebony said, organize the content in different schemes, even within a department. So just imagining it would be really difficult to squeeze out 3 more credits in the PACT course, especially for the majors that I helped develop, the dual certification, LED and special education. But also, since the blueprint, a lot of the IEGs, I'm sure, and certainly in the College of Education at Towson, we have tried to infuse and to look at and see what we are lacking in various important areas, including multilingual learners, and have already done a good analysis and have started to infuse even more some of the competencies needed. And again, we are it has to go through MSDE, certainly, but we also look at the national standards, and the national standards, too, do reflect the importance of the competency in English language learning or multilingual learners. So, but I just wanted to go up to the first Senate bill, please. I just had a question. It's fabulous that the veterans status will be noted on the educator's license. I was just wondering, Maddie, and again, I love the format always. Nice to see you. You always do a great job for us to encapsulate everything that's important to PSTEB. Can you tell me, though, is it more than just giving honor to their service? Do they get any other benefits on that, or is it just to recognize their service?
I believe this is to recognize service. I mean, some of the thought, I don't want to get in Simon Ayer's head, might be like, we do know that there are employers that want to increase the number of veterans who they are employing, and that for whether it be a school system, or, I mean, frankly, obviously this deals with licenses and education, but we know this is something that's important to many sectors. So it could be a way to make it easier to note, like, we have the opportunity to hire a veteran. But as far as MSDE's work, or like something that would impact PSTEB, it is not changing anything in that way. Karen?
Thank you.
Karen, you're still on. Oh, there you go.
Sorry, it wouldn't unclick. I was just going to say that I know our school system, and probably a number of others, actually does give credit towards military service, so that teachers come in at a higher step than they would if they were just otherwise brand new. And there have been times in the past where that was missed in the initial paperwork. So as long as it doesn't create a lot of extra work, it probably will help streamline the process down the road.
That's a really helpful anecdote. Thank you, Karen. Keisha?
Yes, I had a question about Senate Bill 311. I was wondering if you could say more about the portion about the bill allows MSDE to approve a portfolio-based assessment. Is that existing assessments? Can you say more about what the senator is thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can let Kelly chime in as well. But I think some of you might remember that last year there was a nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment for certain types of IHEs that was passed through legislation. This is trying to expand on that and make sure that MSDE has the power to approve these as well. Kelly, do you want to add in a little bit there?
Sure. So the mechanism in the language for MSDE to approve them is if it is an MSD approved teacher preparation program. So it expands what currently is only available to those programs that hold national accreditation from CAVE or AQUEP to programs that choose not to go through the national accreditation process but are approved by the department.
Nikki?
Can we go to the composition? PSTEB composition bill?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I have concerns with this particular bill. I understand there's been a conversation between AIM and MANSEF around this topic. However, my understanding is that the composition and the number of delegates represented is based on the number of representation within the organizations. So if you look at the teacher section, classroom teacher section, the MSEA receives a number of them and BTU has a number of them. And that same thing goes through. I would have concern. I understand AIM's challenges that they have struggle to have representation, but I think that we still should be taking into account the representation across the state for those organizations. And if that just because current leadership hasn't been able to identify and hasn't had the ability to engage doesn't mean the future. And so by changing this permanently, we're in a place where we're shifting that dynamic. And so I just wonder, was there any research done around the number composition to support that? And so that would be my hesitation around it. Like, how do we know that that is an equal representation for Ames versus for the other organization? Thank you.
Kelly.
Sure. So a good point. Although I'm not sure, Nikki, if all of these seats, I'm looking at the law right now, were chosen based on composition. So we would have to dig into that and go back, I think, to the first iteration, back to, I think it was in the 90s, but we could find it to figure out, like, how did they initially, for MSEA and BTU, it's very clear that it's, representation is based on composition, but for the rest of them, I don't think it is. And so the only other thing that I'll add is the law is written to have non-public school administrator and teacher representation. Both of these organizations represent non-public school administrators and teachers. I would argue that those individuals that are employed in publicly funded non-public schools that are required to be licensed and prepared the way our public school teachers are may have a different lens and I'm not at all suggesting that the private school employees, that their voice should not be heard, but I'm actually pleased that that we'll be hearing from those individuals that have to abide by the regulations that we promulgate. So I have a little bit of a different
opinion. I'll also add to that. So I want clarity on that, because you actually uplifted something that I forgot to mention. When I look at the makeup for Ames, it actually, if we go to the makeup, I thought it said classroom teacher, whereas for Mansef, it can be administrator or teacher. And so that was another point that I had. Does that change the dynamic that we have more administrators in this space versus classroom? Because Mansef tends to send administrators and not classroom teachers, whereas Ames around classroom teachers. So if there was some ability to massage this, that it would actually account for them to provide it be a classroom teacher and not that they get to choose. To me, that's another area that we really should be looking at, because we want to make sure it's balanced based on what the expectation was. Thank you.
That's a fair point. You're absolutely right. The way that it's worded right now, they could choose. And so it doesn't specifically state like one teacher, one administrator.
Whereas the language that's being removed is the certified classroom teacher.
It's prescriptive, yes.
Karen?
Just a slight bit of background. Delegate Guyton is very much, a lot of her bills focus on special education issues. That is a particular interest to her throughout her history.
Nikki, do I say hand? Yep.
Maddie, do you think that she would be open to modifying that to where it would state specifically one teacher, one administrator?
I think that like recommending that kind of amendment, just given like the very clear connection between what's being removed, because it's really just about changing the organization. I don't think the intent behind it is to change the actual like composition as far as teacher v administrator. So I think that it makes a lot of sense if you were interested in
contacting
her office or submitting an amendment on that. I think that would be pretty well received.
Okay. I would, thank you.
Because it's not changing the intent behind the bill at all. It's just saying, if we're going to remove a classroom teacher from one organization, move it to a different organization, let's keep the classroom teacher piece.
I'll be in touch with you soon, Maddie. Thanks.
All right. Do we have any other questions on legislation regarding PSTEB? Kelly.
So not a question, but I just did want to take a moment, since this is the first meeting of several where we're back into the legislative session and we're talking about legislation. Just want to remind the board, I know that there are some new members, that, you know, as a board, you absolutely have the right to consider submitting, as Maddie said, we could provide oral testimony, we could provide written testimony. There's a way to provide a letter of support. You could provide a letter of support with amendments. So you're supporting the bill if, and this what's making me think of this is this last bill we're talking about. So, you know, the board could potentially support the bill with the amendments that we just discussed about, you know, delegating the teacher versus administrator seat, or you could submit a letter of testimony to oppose a bill. So know that that is an option for any bill that is dropped, and it's just something that we would have to decide. And then my office would help to draft that, and then the chair would sign off on it, and we would submit it.
Kelly, when a bill drops, you know, pretty quickly in the presentation of that bill happens before the next meeting, what kind of opportunity would the board have to weigh in as a collective? Would that, based on the guidance that we have from just sort of like our orientation, could that happen asynchronously as long as it's via email? I just want to,
Yeah,
or does it need to,
it's
like,
a fair
it's just kind of
question.
hard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's a fair question, and I know Sean is on, so please interrupt me if I misrepresent. So because of the Open Meetings Act, we cannot have an email conversation about something.
Okay.
So there's a couple, and there are absolutely times when, you know, the hearing for a bill comes very quickly, and we may not have time to meet as a board. So in the past of, you know, Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been times when the board has basically, you know, agreed on some global tenets for, you know, like, I'm just gonna throw this out there, I'm making this up, but you know, like anytime there's a bill where there's extra coursework required in teacher preparation, the board decides, you know, that we're in general going to oppose a bill like that, or we're not going to support it. And then give the chair the autonomy, vote to give the chair the autonomy to work on behalf of the board with MSDE to draft whatever testimony is sufficient. So that's one way you could go. Another way would be to try to get a second meeting scheduled, like as it comes up. It's difficult because there has to be quorum. It has to be an open meeting. It would be virtual, but that's also an option to try to get the board together very quickly. And I can't really think of a third way, but Maddie, if you can think of something, please jump in.
I can't think of anything where you all could take like a public position, like this is the position of PSTEB, but I don't think, and Kelly or Sean, please correct me if I'm wrong, there is anything keeping you all, if you said, a couple of us would like to meet with delegate so-and-so or senator so-and-so. You do not need to take a public stance as a board in an open meeting to determine that some of you would just like to take a meeting and share information that is supportive, or information that might inform a bill, or information about some concerns you have. Having like an informal or just like a meeting one-on-one over the phone, over Zoom, or in Annapolis should not require you all to like declare as a board's a position in an open meeting. Karen?
So this is why the state board just did their legislative principles. Our board does, MABE does, and also we have resolutions that staff bases a lot of the positions. And I'm putting the MABE website out there because they've, under advocacy, they've just instituted an improved legislative tracker. So they have staff, as Maddie is, but beefed up the staff at MABE to really focus on, they follow like 400 education bills a session. So if you want to see where MABE is standing, and a lot of theirs, as I say, because we meet monthly, the legislative committee, but if it's between meetings, they go based on our resolutions. So kind of what Kelly was saying was, if we had this, you know, MABE is always local control. You know that all the time. That's our guiding principle. But you know, PSTEB might have that extra classes, extra coursework. We're going to be dubious about that. We want to have some say. So you could have some kind of standing principles that then leadership could go off of.
Yeah, you all have identified all the solutions that I would have suggested. And I think it's just the one thing I wanted to chime in and say is I think it's a use your best judgment approach based on the legislation in question, right? Different pieces of legislation with different, urgency or importance might precipitate a different approach based on, if depending upon, the impact the legislation might have, it might be more appropriate to either abide by the general guiding principles you talked about and have the chair, draft something kind of as a housekeeping function. It might be more effective to have the in-person conversation with the legislators themselves, or just as a few board members, or if it's a particularly impactful piece of legislation, it might be more appropriate to schedule that impromptu meeting if possible. So I think it's just using your best judgment based on the impact the legislation might have.
Thank you. In December and January, we sort of entertained conversation around this board having legislative priorities because we don't in the way that other boards do. And so sort of navigating that to carry the message of the board in I guess a unified way would be helpful. So thank you for your responses. I'd be interested in documenting some guidance to help us do that.
All right, any other comments in this area? All right, so I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Leslie. I saw your hand up.
So my question would be for a different bill, the one around the background check, changing the point in time when the background checks occur. I think it was the first one.
Are you talking about the school psychologist licensure compact?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. I guess I'm just wondering if you know anything about the reasoning behind that. Is it just that otherwise they're having 2 background checks? And I guess also just wondering, does changing that set any precedent that other professionals' background check timing would be different and is better?
So the reason I can't speak to if I do know that there are some states, and Kelly can speak to this more, that do, I believe, almost all of the background check process for their K-12 system in-house at the SEA. That obviously takes a lot of staffing. Like I'm sure some of you have heard about the level of staffing we have for the childcare sector in order to do that, like whether it's at regional offices or within like MSD headquarters. So it's obviously a huge staffing lift for SEAs to do that. But there are states that do that. So that could be one reason the compact is. As far as like why Maryland would have to make that change, when you adopt, I'm sure you all know this, when you adopt a compact for any form of professional field, you generally have to adopt the compact as it is written. You cannot make changes to the compact. So because this compact is written in that way, that the SEA would be the one doing criminal background checks at licensing as opposed to the employer doing it at hire, we just have to opt into that if we became part of the compact, because there's no option to change the writing on it, as so that we can have that reciprocity across the states that are a part of this. And in order, obviously this would have to do with like a very specific field. This would be about the number of school psychologists that choose to go through this pathway as opposed to other pathways doing this. That said, if there were ever a push to bring the K-12 sector writ large into MSDE, that would be a huge change in our practices. And it's not that we don't, no one's saying that like, oh, there's a value judgment on that, it's right or wrong. It would just be a really big change in staffing, and our office would need to look significantly more like childcare licensing than it does currently.
Can I comment on this a little bit too?
Yes, please do.
Speaking of the joining the compacts and what's happening with school psychology, another theory that I had when I saw it, and also just knowing just sort of the work of Senator Augustine, I believe that the history around various districts having their own procedures and practices that are neighboring districts also could have led to this, so that there is not the barrier that exists. For example, teacher candidates, when they have 2 placements in 2 different counties, they have to pay the background fee and get background checks for the 2 different counties instead of there being one central opportunity. And so it could be that this was a part of that conversation. or not. But thank you, Maddie, for naming the huge lift that happens at an SCA for that kind of work. So
Kelly?
So just to clarify, if this compact were to be put in place, for the difference between the criminal background check happening at licensure and employment, it would just be an additional check, because family law is not changing. And family law requires any certain types of employers, including all school employers, to conduct background checks on or before the first day of employment. So that will still happen, which means an additional cost.
wow.
Yeah, just
Wow.
to be clear. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's not, I was thinking it was one or the other, so they have
Yeah,
both.
well, that's a reasonable thought, but that's not
That's
what was.
not where this lands. Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, are there any more questions on legislation? Well, thank you all so much for having me. It's always great to see you all. You're so welcoming. You come with really interesting questions that make me like want to dive even further into my work. And I really look forward to seeing you all in March.
All right. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's greatly
Of course.
appreciated.
And you all should have all of my contact information, especially because I'm going to be sharing this presentation with you all again. So if any of you have any questions for me, you should, I'll make sure you all have my email in that email. All right. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Have a good day. All right, so let's cycle back to the big picture, because we've looked at quite a bit and had quite a bit of comment. So Sean, correct me if I get any of this wrong, Kelly, the same. It looks to me as though, if we summarize everything, there are ways for us to give feedback on any of these bills that we're going over. So one would be to do that individually. So if any of us have our own opinions about it, we wish to express that on our own, we can certainly contact the office in person, or we can submit letters, or we can even produce testimony if we'd like. Then in addition to that, the organizations that we represent can also do the same thing as an organization. They can speak for the bodies of the people that they represent. So same thing, they can go in person, submit letters, and produce testimony. Then there are occasions, and thank you, Kelly, I think you did a great job of summarizing this, where we as a board believe something is important enough that as a board, we draft a letter. And in some cases, and I've done this, but it's been a few years ago, the board has, at their pleasure, directed the chair and the vice chair to sign up to give actual testimony on certain bills. So my question right now is, do any of these bills, and I'm at the pleasure of the board, whatever the board would want, are there any of these bills where any of our members believe they rise to the occasion that the board should draft a letter of support or non-support? And if that's the case, we would need a motion, and we can certainly move forward as Kelly suggested. But I need that to be open to the board.
Hi, it's Dr. Woodward. I'd like to make a motion that we support with amendments the composition bill, and have it require that for the MANSEF, there's one teacher position, one administrator position.
I'll second, Karen.
All right. So we open it now to any discussion that we would want to have.
To speak in favor of it, I would just state that I think having a very diverse group in which we have the honor of having our higher eds, our classroom teacher voice, as well as administrators across multiple organizations from PSTEB and to MANSEF, I think it's really important that we keep that dynamic, and I would be in favor of ensuring that we continue that. And I do agree with Kelly's point about making sure these are non-public placements do have the same requirements, and so I want to make sure we elevate their voice in addition to making sure their actual educator voices, classroom educator voices, are in the space to inform the decisions we make. Thank you.
Sue?
I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to Nikki for bringing up that excellent point about making sure it's clarified that it's not two administrators. I share this as somebody who comes from the MANSEF perspective, and that's why I'm part of this. And I think that's actually a really important and great amendment, and also supported. So thank you, Nikki, for raising that to attention.
All right. Any other further discussion on that? All right. And I would assume, if possible, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we wanted as a board to authorize, say, Nikki or Sue to work with Kelly in the drafting of this letter, which would be submitted to me and Ebony for our signatures. There wouldn't be anything wrong with doing that, correct?
No, it'd be helpful. No, it would be helpful just to highlight, in terms of the, before, as far as the votes take. I mean, to the extent you can specify what the broad focus of the letter in the vote, that's helpful. But no, you can absolutely convene like a small drafting work group to put into writing what you've described.
Okay, and since we were discussing email, if we ask or give permission for the board to contact them with any thoughts that individual board members have, is that allowable?
This is where I would maybe be a little careful about, the transacting of public business during, a non-open meeting. So that's why I gave the caution of, I would, to the extent you can sketch out the broad strokes of the letter, before the vote, if possible, or just the overarching points. I think the rest can be reasonably done through email correspondence if necessary.
Okay, and that makes sense. I assumed that was what the answer was going to be. I saw Kelly nodding her head as well. I just wanted that to be specifically addressed because I realize as we think about these things, we're probably like, oh, I'll just send an email and so forth, and we don't have to be careful of that. Okay, so that's a clear answer. I definitely appreciate that. All right, so Nikki, could you encapsulate this as to what you'd like your motion to be? And then I'm gonna, because we've talked about it a little bit, but can you rephrase or just summarize what this would be?
I move a motion of support of the composition, that PSTEB composition bill with amendments that include one position for administrator and one position for classroom teacher.
All right, any further discussion? And I assume the second still stands based on that phrasing. All right, and it does. Karen says yes. All right, Kelly, can we just do a thumbs up? Is that all right? All right, so all in favor of the proposal, please signify by giving a thumbs up. All right, are there any opposed? And do we have any abstentions? All right, then without objection, the board will give Nikki, if you don't mind accepting this. And what I'd like to do is make sure the person who is the best articulate at probably wording this for the board probably is the person who kind of helps draft the letter. And then I have no problem looking at it along with Ebony, and we can put our signatures on it. So I would authorize you and I think Sue, if that's correct, to work together on this with Kelly to produce a letter to be given to Ebony and I for signature. Is that to the pleasure of the board? Would anybody object to that? All right, Jenny?
I think Kelly was ahead of me. Kelly?
I'm sorry, Kelly?
Sorry.
The only thing I was going to throw out there is I love the idea of Dr. Woodward and Sue drafting the letter, but my staff does staff this board. So if you want us to draft the letter, we can and send it to Nikki and Sue. However you want to do it, it is our role. So I'm happy to do it for you.
All right, Nikki, what's your thought on that? Would you like them to do it and then you guys take a look at it?
Sounds great to me if Sue's in agreement.
All right, that's great. Well, thank you for offering that, Kelly. I appreciate that. I'm very cognizant of how much work you all have as well. So, but you guys always rise to the occasion, so I appreciate it. All right, now, are there any, oh, I'm sorry, now Jenny, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. I feel very strongly about the HB 0807, the teacher preparation programs, English language learner teacher competency requirements. I feel that the requirement of it being a certain course should be removed. The spirit can stay, and again, not good with verbiage, but the requirement of it being a standalone course, I believe, needs to be removed.
And Leslie?
I agree with Jenny. I think that it's a really important issue. My suggestion might have been for this board to submit some kind of formal letter or recommendation around our reasoning. Since we have had so much conversation about this and not wanting to add any more barriers, I think that from the outside, it sounds really good. And to just outright oppose it, I think might be confusing for the public. So just for this board to kind of compose a letter with an explanation of our position.
All right, anyone else? Go ahead, Dr. Schaffman. Ebony?
Sure. I would like to just offer some context should we decide to, I guess I could have waited for discussion, but I'll talk about it now since we're talking about the bill. Just, we know that educator preparation programs must align with COMAR, state competencies, national accreditation standards, teacher certification, renewal expectations, and this. I think that the letter, should we again go in that direction, should move toward an integrated approach for the support. Something else that I think should go into the letter is the use of the term multilingual learners, as the English language learner term is not what has been recommended from the EL work group. If we decide to say that we're opposed to it, as mentioned, and we offer some content. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
I think Sean might have been moving around, so that might have just been.
Oh, okay. I thought I was out of order some way.
I thought the same thing.
Okay, but if there is a way to propose a middle ground where we recognize, and strengthen existing courses rather than require standalone course, it's just somewhere to help move this forward. We are in support of advancing multilingual learner and teacher preparation. A 3-credit hour standalone course, I think, is the barrier here. Thank you.
And I think in discussion that people have had, and I don't mean to jump ahead of anybody, but I just want to make this on top of Ebony's comment. I think there's a concern if we think about what's led us to this, there's a concern as to whether teachers graduating from a 4-year program have the skills that they need to meet the needs of English language learners. And I think there's a feeling that oftentimes there are deficits. And I'll be honest with you, I think the deficits are even greater in teachers like me that aren't graduating from programs that incorporated much of this in them at all. So there is a high need, I think, to sharpen our instruction in these areas and our preparation of teachers across the board. I think the question is, what's the best way to do this that'll meet the needs of students? And it's a very complex issue, and it's not easily arrived at with a solution, which is kind of where we are. But the question is the 3-credit course the best way to do it? And I think the overall feeling is that poses an enormous number of challenges that may not work as well as people thought. But that need, acknowledging that the need is there, I think is important if we do draft a response. And I don't know if Karen or Kelly was next.
I think I was next. Basically, I'm going to say what Ebony said, but just put a little more formal. A lot of times what's good to do is to support with amendments. If you just oppose, you kind of are bumping, you're hurting. They're human beings. They're trying to help people, the legislators. And so right away now you've kind of taken yourself out of the discussion. And so through May, we've learned a lot of times we say no, but when we can, we try to support with amendments. I think it's a really good amendment to say, we understand, change it to multilingual learners, and that would be part of the amendment. And then to say, how difficult the standalone 3-credit course, the onus that puts on IHEs and students to get all that in, and all the arguments that people are much better able to make. So we're supporting the idea of strengthening that education. I think your point is great, Darren, that this really is needed, having some background to help all students, but that the standalone course is the problem area.
Can we go back to Ebony to respond to that? And thank you, Karen.
Yes, and one of the ways that we could offer support is some language around, at renewal, et cetera, right? There are other opportunities to Darren's point about, advancing this work. And so a balance between either, bolstering existing courses not requiring a 3-credit standalone course, and thinking about what could happen at renewal are other ways to sort of make sure that we share that we are in spirit and that we are support the spirit, as Jenny mentioned. However, with these barriers, lay them out, as it stands, it creates more challenges than anything else.
Yeah, and I would add to that, we often, well, we don't do it often. We try very hard not to be overly prescriptive when you write COMAR, but there are times where we do draft something that's overarching, and then we put some bullet points to include instruction in, and we do some specifics, because I think the suggestion is that often teachers don't have specific hands-on strategies to use when students come to us. So if the already existing instruction were to include something a little more sharpened so that you have specific strategies that are in place, and we don't have to be prescriptive enough to say what they are, those are sometimes ways where you strengthen what's already in place, but you don't throw the whole system out, by which a person has to go through and rethink their entire program to make things fit. And I think, Ebony, did I phrase that correctly?
Yes.
To your thinking? All right. All right. So I appreciate that. All right, Kelly.
So listening to the board, I want to make sure, since we'll draft the letter, I want to make sure I'm understanding, and I'm going to throw something out. So looking at, I don't know how many of you are looking at the actual bill, but so there's 2 sections in the bill. One section reads, training in English language learner related teacher competencies, including understanding language development, equitable literacy learning opportunities, and working with linguistically diverse students and families, and including English language learner related teacher competencies in other courses throughout the curriculum. I might suggest that we support with amendments, and that those amendments include striking the word other, so that it's clear that if we're in agreement with everything I read, that is kind of like the not explicit but general enough competencies and standards that we're looking for. I would suggest supporting that language with striking that other, so that it's throughout courses, which is what we do now. And then striking the next section completely, which says beginning in the 28-29 academic school year, requiring at least 1 3-credit course in teaching English language learners. And then, of course, we would write a letter focusing on why we're making those recommendations, including our current standards, what they say, our current competencies, what they say, our renewal opportunities for licensure. So all of that goodness.
All right, I think that sounds great, but I want to make sure that the board is receptive to that. Could you just give me a thumbs up if you're receptive to what Kelly just suggested? All right, any suggestions in addition to that? All right, and I see Nikki's hand up, but I want to give a little bit more time.
I just wanted to elevate what was said around different points in the learning process. So we know that our educators who come to schools, to our systems, have to start with a now I'm skipping on the word, but for 3 years until they are become veteran educators, they have to go through a series of learning opportunities in order to obtain their I am blanking on words today. Brain fog is real. But I think if we could isolate and talk about the points in which an educator is receiving professional development supports, that's at renewal, that's within those first 3 years of a novice educator. So there are targeted points where we already have put in place. And so I think emphasizing and elevating those targets points already is a great way to demonstrate when and the how we would accomplish this. And I think that might help this delegate better understand that we're very in tune with the needs and are thinking with her about how to make it get accomplished.
All right, excellent point. Anyone else? All right.
Sorry, Darren, I couldn't get my hand. I just wanted to throw in, it's a bunch of delegates, and 2 former school board members are on there in the group, so.
Yeah, it's sometimes powerful, sometimes when these letters come, to actually kind of note the membership with on the board, the various organizations that make up the board. So I think that sometimes is powerful because every now and then, we get folks who aren't quite sure, who are you? What do you do? Who do you represent? So having that on the letterhead might be actually pretty good, or beneath the signatures, as I'm saying. All right. So at this point, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I guess I have a lot of questions today. I'm just wondering if Nikki could sort of clarify. I think, were you talking about the teacher, like the 3-year initiation or like mentoring process, that is where teachers would be getting that extra support?
Correct, because there are, the way that it's written up now, that every school system by, and now I'm not gonna remember what year because it's in the actual blueprint, that every school system is supposed to be putting in a preparatory support program. Every system has to, right? So we already know.
Is that what you're
Induction.
talking about?
Oh
That's
my
the
God,
word.
I could not find the word in my brain today.
The words, yep, will help.
Thank you, Dr. McIntosh.
Good job. Thank you.
The induction program that everyone has to have, every system's going to have to build that. That's, to me, a natural way in which you're utilizing the students you're currently working with. You can assess your own data and build that skill set based on the students you work with currently.
Yeah. My only question or wondering around that, so I am mentoring a few teachers at my school, and I honestly don't think there's any non-native English speakers at the school I work at. And in fact, it's the 4th school even in the city, and only one of the schools I've worked at had like a population that was significant around that. And so I just worry, with all of the things new career or early career teachers are already juggling, I'm concerned that would feel sort of maybe superfluous for some teachers to have to kind of do this multilingual learner component in the induction process, if they're not working with multilingual learners, if that makes sense. I personally think we should all be a lot better at working with multilingual learners. And I know we have to have some debate about how that happens, but I just think as a mentor and as a person who's just seeing the way that my early career teachers are feeling about some things, that might feel like an undue burden to them. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that.
I can. So I want to separate the word mentor. The induction program asks for there to be an academic mentor. There are 2 different types of mentors that we're talking about. Oftentimes, it sounds to me like you're mentoring them through the culture, climate of the school, what's going on. That is not the level of support that the induction level academics instructional mentor will be providing. They'll be providing around things like their I'm going to have to use Montgomery County in my mind, because I look at our PAR program. So we have 2 different sets of mentors. We have the collegial support climate culture mentor, and then we have the actual instructional mentor. And that instructional mentor sits with those educators to look at their data, to engage around their standards for their individual LEA system, and incorporate how classroom environment and management and all the various levels of it. So currently, most systems outside of Montgomery and Baltimore, they're the only 2 that have isolated instructional academic mentors, and most of the other systems now have collegial mentors. So those induction programs that LEAs are going to be building, they're going to have to be thinking about that. I'd also add to that, in the academic teacher prep program, they have no access to students with language learning. So to me, it would be just the same if it was embedded at the teacher prep program level, because they may or may not be in that space where they are do student teaching, and to have that access, and depending on what school they're placed, they may not. So I do think there are ways in which it could be incorporated and supported that go along with what I seem to understand the blueprint and what MSDE's expectations will be around instructional mentorship, not collegial mentorship. And Kelly can say, absolutely, you're wrong, Nikki. But that's just my thinking through it.
I thank you, Dr. Woodward. I wanted to also add that the delegate that is proposing this bill is in the district of the College Park area, where I used to teach, and I taught at the high school that had the highest ESOL population in the state. And so there are opportunities, right, as well on the other end of the spectrum for every school that you've ever taught in, to include multilingual learners. And also, I just want to make sure that I reiterate that when we draft the letter, should we go in this direction of striking a nice balance between being in favor of the bill with the amendments that Kelly articulated, that we also invite the opportunity for multilingual learners to rest in the bill per the EO work group, as well as all the latest research on multilingual learners. And with that, and one of the reasons for that is because of the multilingual learners in schools who may be speaking multiple languages at home, but might not be like on an ESOL track. And it's also an asset-based way to move how we position our learners. So thanks, everybody.
And those are great points. I see a lot of heads nodding as you say that. And just getting back to Leslie's point as well, oftentimes teachers will say, well, why do I need so much training? I don't have any ELL students. And while I understand that, you kind of want to make sure you're sharpened for the students you have in front of you. If you wait and get the training after you get an ELL student, it's too late. You don't have any training for that student to come in. So teachers have to be ready for all the students who are going to come to us in the public setting, and things change rapidly. I can speak from experience at my school. But that was one of the comments I sometimes would make, and I realized later that's not the way to think. So anyway, I've changed my thinking entirely on that. So I want to be ready for every kid who comes in my room. All teachers, I think, would share that.
Yeah, I don't mean that we shouldn't be ready. Oh
no, I don't. And please don't misunderstand.
We have
I know
so
you
many multilingual learners, but yeah, just to have it feel supportive and not burdensome, I guess.
Exactly.
One thing I was thinking about what you just said is with the latest language in the literacy policies coming out of MSTE, there are opportunity also there through the induction process to frame literacy support with a wide range of learners, and the skills that come from the multilingual literacy pedagogy and research. Everybody would benefit, right? There's just a boost on language and content, as you know, and social studies education. So that's another way that we could frame the coaching that we offer, both academically as well as in the wonderful ways that you are mentoring our new teachers.
No, I love that. I learned a lot working with multilingual learners that I definitely incorporate now too. So I like that framing a lot. Thank you for that.
Yep. And thanks for your comment, Leslie. I do appreciate that. Yep. And I certainly understand your commitment to this issue. All right. So at this point, I would need someone to make a motion to draft a letter in response to, I want to make sure I get it right. I think it's HB 807. Encompassing the various thoughts that the board has expressed.
So moved.
All right, so moved by Jenny. I'll need a second.
Dr. Taylor.
Okay, Dr. Taylor has seconded. Any further discussion on this? All right, let's do as we did before. All in favor, let's do a show of hands. All right, are there any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, seeing none, we'll ask Kelly and her staff to go ahead and draft a letter and then send that out to Dr. Shockley and myself. All right, we thought this was going to be a light meeting. So now let's see, we are at 10:43. I'm kind of thinking the rest we can probably get through reasonably fast, but we probably should take a 10-minute break. Would that be all right? All right, so let's take a 10-minute break, and that will put us back, let's just say, well, let's say 10:55. All right, that's a good even number. All right, so let's break for just a moment. All right, so we're at 10:55. So as soon as everybody logs back on, we'll be ready to go. All right, I think we're ready to resume. Hannah, I owe you a huge apology. Are you there?
I am.
We were 20 minutes ahead. And now we're 40 minutes behind, and that's my fault. So I apologize. And then I called break, so it rolled out even longer. So my apology. Thank you so much for waiting, and hopefully I didn't inconvenience you too much. But we're ready when you are. Again, my apologies.
No worries. Let me see if can you all see me? I don't
Yes.
see myself. Okay, perfect. No, it is no worries. It was a very interesting conversation. So I am going to, you should have all gotten your summary of actions this month from the state board's January meeting. So I'll walk through those quickly, and then we can shift to what February is looking like. A couple of COMAR items that we adopted in January were the Pathways to Teacher Licensure, which I believe is coming before you all today. So the state board adopted that. We adopted our new updated COMAR for PE. We also had a couple of calendar waiver requests from districts wanting to use President's Day as an inclement weather day, makeup day. And we released some guidance for the superintendent we released guidance to give the superintendent authority to just designate President's Day as an inclement weather day writ large. And I know that there's been some additional work in that area just because of how many days students have missed with the big storm last week and into this week. So I know there is probably a little bit more to come on that from the department. We also approved the final Accountability Advisory Committee report. So that is from part 2 of our assessment and accountability work. We had a task force that met in 2024, and that was about assessment and accountability. And then we had this additional task force that kind of had some overlapping membership that was focused cleanly on our accountability system and the changes that MSDE should look to implement in our kind of next generation of this assessment and accountability program. A couple of big items, we granted permission to publish our adolescent literacy policy. So that builds on the pre-K to grade 3 literacy policy, and that builds grade 4 through high school. Just because we know that literacy issues don't stop at 3rd grade. So we are really excited about building out that additional work stream there to support teachers in supporting students with maybe some more foundational literacy issues. We also received a presentation on our cohort graduation rates for 24-25 and our 24-25 kindergarten readiness assessment. Well, that actually might be, I think the kindergarten readiness was actually 25-26 kindergarten readiness data. So the board got an update there. We also received a presentation on the updates from teacher participation in science of reading training, as well as the education leadership program for principals, superintendent, and local board members. That's part of the blueprint. So we got an update there. And then we recommended permission to republish an amended and a new section of COMAR related to the appeals to the state board for request for removal of local board members. So we just built out that section to just put in regulations where they didn't exist there. And we tightened some timelines and existing regulations too, just to ensure that, we have due process protections, but also ensuring that things aren't lingering for too long. I think, let's see, we also, because it was January, session had started by our full board meeting. So we had adopted a suite of positions on legislation that had come out at that point. So the full board voted on those positions, which had come through the state board's legislative subgroup, which is a subgroup of members that meets weekly to kind of recommend positions for the full board on various pieces of legislation. And then lastly, we approved an amendment to a joint implementation policy that we have with AIB related to the minimum school funding. So that just bumped out the final year for LEAs to come into compliance with minimum school funding from FY27 to FY28. Just because we know that this is, we're seeing promising work from LEAs. And we also know that this is just a really big lift for our locals. And so we are still maintaining the kind of scaffolded implementation plan where, bringing in, ensuring that an increasing number of students are in schools that are meeting minimum school funding requirements, so that those kind of intermediate requirements are still in place, but we're just bumping that final year where you should be, very nearly perfectly in compliance to FY28. So before I shift to, it was a shorter board meeting because it was fully virtual. So just before I shift to February, I wanted to see if there were any questions from the group. Nikki?
Yes. It relates to the first topic you spoke to around the inclement weather days and the challenges that they're going to be facing. I know that there is an emergency bill being brought in that would allow for potentially a couple of years of utilizing days and hours. Do you know if the board will be taking up any positions on any emergency bills that will be coming forward?
I do not. So
Okay.
I haven't, our group has not discussed that legislation yet, but once it drops, if it hasn't already, and if it has dropped, please feel free to share it in the chat. But
Okay.
that has not come before our internal or our subgroup meeting yet. So we would definitely want to review that language before speaking publicly.
I don't have it at my fingers, but I can get that to you. Thanks, Hannah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I will move us over to a preview of February. So hopefully we will be in person in February. So on the consent agenda for now, we'll have the permission to adopt the students at risk for reading difficulties. So that's kind of our literacy policy regulations. So those will be adopted. We also have the assessments for paraprofessionals working in Title I schools. That's coming back to the Ed Policy Committee next week and for permission to adopt. And so the Policy Committee had asked for a little bit more data about this, just because this is something fairly new for this group of board members. So Kelly had said that we would bring back some data. So depending on how that goes, we anticipate the board will vote on permission to adopt to that. We also will have MABE as our stakeholder engagement for February, so we're excited to welcome them. Another big thing every February is our kind of teacher workforce data deep dive. So it is the Kelly Show, and we will have a big presentation on the supply, demand, diversity, all the things about our teacher workforce in Maryland. And then February is also CTE month, so we're going to highlight some apprenticeship programs, and we're going to try to highlight some LEAs apprenticeship work, and maybe bring in some of our LEA staff and maybe even students to just. I think there has been a lot of apprenticeship work, and it's just to help kind of clarify all of the programs that we have in Maryland around registered apprenticeships. We will also get a career counseling update. So MSDE has recently launched this kind of phase of work, and so the board is excited to dig in on career counseling and see where we've been and where we're going. We will also get a homework presentation. So this is recommendations from MSDE about homework requirements, or homework, I don't want to say requirements, recommendations for student homework. And then, of course, we will have our legislative session update where we will vote on positions to take on various pieces of legislation. And we will get the progress monitoring updates. So AIB, as you may know, goes around to schools and districts to conduct these progress monitoring conferences. MSDE staff sits in on those, so we will get an update on how those went and any next steps or trends we saw from those conferences. We will also have a suite of regulations that you all are probably familiar with. So they will first go to education policy, and then we'll come to the full board. So that is permission to publish for a COMAR for supervisors of instruction, assistant principals, and principals. We will get another COMAR on library media administrators, and then a third COMAR on supervisors of special education. So all of those will be permission to publish, and those are coming to the board in February. And then lastly, two more things. We will be voting on permission to adopt the COMAR related to our health education curriculum or course standards and framework. So that has been out for public comment, and that will be coming in for permission to adopt in February. And then lastly, on the COMAR train is we will be bringing for permission to publish a new section of COMAR related to appeals for local superintendent termination decisions. So that is what we have in February. Happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
All right, seeing no questions or comments, Hannah, thank you so much for another fantastic presentation, very thorough. Again, love the links that are involved. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for your patience with our time today.
Of course, thank you all so much. Have a good one.
You too. All right, we're now going past the 11 o'clock cutoff. So here's what I would suggest. Just in case anybody would need to move a little early, we do have one action item, which is permission to publish COMAR 13A. I'd like to move that forward so we can do that just in case anybody would need to leave. Is there anybody who would object to doing that, changing the order today? All right, so let's move on to that. And Ms. Fitzpatrick, I think, is going to present for that. And thank you for your patience.
You're welcome. Good morning, everyone. So as Hannah mentioned, I'm here this morning to request permission to adopt the amendments to Code of Maryland Regulations 13A 120203, the pathways to teacher licensure. And these are specifically for the alternative pathways, the fine arts transcript analysis pathways, so 13A 120203. 3A7, and then also the secondary content transcript analysis pathway. So that would be A8. So as Hannah mentioned, well, you all know that in December, the amendments went into the Maryland Register for public comment. We did receive 20 comments, and I'll briefly talk about those. But with those comments, the State Board of Education in its January meeting on the 27th granted permission to adopt the amendments to COMAR for the teacher pathways. So again, the 20 public comments that we received were in support of adoption of the regulation. We did receive one public comment from one of our licensure partners, and most of those questions were around the resources that the Maryland State Department of Education licensure team will provide to our licensure partners to assist them with transcript analysis. So providing them with acceptable content related occupational experience, because while transcript analysis, that process of evaluation is not new to the licensure team, looking at occupational experience for teacher areas, specifically for fine arts and secondary general ed areas is new. So we are creating those resources to be reviewed by Kelly and senior leadership, and then we will have our licensure partners look at those resources and give us some feedback. And of course, anytime we have any amendments, we train our licensure partners. So I just wanted to mention that. And so at this time, MSDE is not recommending making any substantive changes to the language of those amendments that we are bringing forward. And so again, I am going to pause and just see if there are any questions before we move forward with permission to adopt.
All right. Well, as chair, I just want to say thanks to everyone who gave us public comment. And just so everyone knows, if you would address that to Kelly Meadows, that went out to all the members of the board. And it was so moving to read the public comment, because so many people shared their stories with us about why they were becoming teachers and the challenges that they were encountering, rewards that they were achieving along the way. And they were very, very expressive about the way this change could help the program and help students and so forth. But I really did, I was very moved by some of the stories that got submitted. So I just want to thank everyone, and rest assured, everything that you wrote was read by members of this board, and it was greatly appreciated. And I also appreciate too, in the transmittal memo, just going over any concerns that have been addressed and responses to that as well. So thank you, Kelly, you and your group for doing that. As always, it was good. It was a good synopsis, and I appreciate you sharing everything with this board. All right, so we open it up for questions, comments.
I'd like to echo the sentiment that you articulated, Chair Hornbeck, and also appreciate the work of the Fine Arts Committee, because it very much helped the work group for the secondary education transcript analysis pathway where we landed. So kudos to the work of the Fine Arts team, as well as the MSDE for being wonderful thought partners in this work.
Yeah, thank you for adding. I echo that as well. You know, when you think about it, we started working on this long before summer came. And I remember having many conversations with art teachers, even through the summer and so forth. And, you know, we received it, we had questions about it and so forth. And then Kelly's team went back and worked on it, refined it, listened to people and the work of the work group. So this was tricky, but based on the comment we got, I think that deliberativeness got it right. So I appreciate it. So kudos to everybody who worked on it. All right, any other questions, comments about this? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt. Get the number here. COMAR 13A120203, Pathways to Teacher Licensure.
Dr. Taylor moves to adopt.
Okay.
And I will second it.
Oh, okay. Then seconded by Karen. I think Nikki was in there somewhere, but I didn't see it. So, all right. So now, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, we signify just by saying aye again or raising your hand. All right, are there any opposed? Do we have any abstentions? All right, then we have permission to adopt. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. And I really, again, appreciate all your hard work. I know some of the fine arts members here at MSDE have already chatted me and they're super excited. So thank you all again.
Thank you for your work as well. All right, so now we go to the approval of the January minutes. Those were sent out. If you could take a look at those, I'll give everybody just a couple of minutes to glance over that before we vote on that. All right, so I'm going to throw this open for discussion. Did anybody see anything that needs to be added, deleted, or changes that need to be made?
Hi, this is Amy Poye. I was present in the meeting. I think I'm listed as absent.
Okay, we can change that. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with the changes noted, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt the January 8th, 2026 minutes.
I'll move to adopt.
All right, so moved by Leslie. I need a second.
Second, Dr. Taylor.
All right, seconded by Dr. Taylor. All in favor, just signify by raising your hand. Any abstentions? Anyone voting no? All right, then we have adopted that. Was there anything for the communications update? I think we covered most of this in some of the other areas, but I just want to make sure. All right, Kelly, can you walk us through potential items for our March agenda?
Sure. So our normal agenda items, including public comment, announcements, communication update, we will have another legislative update through the legislative session, as well as a state board update. I plan on, I believe March, unless something changes, we tentatively have a presentation that is coming in partnership with the Maryland Higher Education Commission. They have been working with some individual institutions that took place in their teacher diversity grant. And so sharing some of that work, we think this board would be interested in. I'm going to the state board this month with the regulations that this board took action on last month. So they won't be coming back for a couple more months. So that won't be part. Oh, and the teacher supply and demand, the supply and demand presentation.
Okay.
Right. What date are you presenting that to the state board? Do you know?
The 24th.
Okay, 24th. I know everyone's eager to see that. It's the Kelly show, as she said. Yeah, we
I have a
definitely.
quick question for clarification.
Sure.
Yes, I'm having a conflict on my calendar and I just need to make sure is our meeting for April 9th or April 16th? I know there was questions around because there's spring breaks there between a few counties, and I want to make sure that my calendar is correct.
April 9th.
Thank you.
All right. Any other suggestions for the agenda for our March meeting? All right, Kelly, as always, we thank you for putting that together. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have now finished with our agenda. Is there anything else that needs to be added for the good of the group? All right, everybody, stay warm. Thank you so much. I think this was a very productive meeting. We covered quite a bit. Pat yourself on the back and have a wonderful afternoon. Drive safely if anybody's going anywhere, but hopefully you might get to stay in and stay warm. All right, everyone, thank you for a great meeting. Without objection, I will adjourn. Bye.
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 Bye. Thanks, Darren.
Bye-bye.